welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Stephen Sackur. Armenia is a small state with outsized strategic significance in a Caucasus region beset with tension and hostility. Last year, popular protests delivered a so-called Velvet Revolution, which saw a new government installed in Yerevan amid ambitious talk of reform. My guest is the foreign minister in that government, Zohrab Mnatsakanyan. Is Armenia looking east or west for political and economic inspiration? Zohrab Mnatsakanyan, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
Last year saw major political upheaval in your country, Armenia, the so-called Velvet Revolution, after which you and your government claimed that you were working for a new Armenia. Skeptics will say it looks very much like the old Armenia. So what's different?
Why would they say that?
Because,
Armenia,
for example, you were an official for many, many years under previous regimes. You're a man of great governmental experience. You're not a new broom at all.
I made a choice of my own. I made a choice to move from diplomatic career to politics. That's the major change. I took up the responsibility to share with the government in which I am. And this is a major change. The government has received a huge mandate from the people, from the public, as a result of the revolution. We have reacted, the government has reacted to those popular demands and received a strong mandate to deliver the change, and we have demonstrated the very strong power of political will, in which with political will you can deliver very quickly results which were stemming from the popular demand, and those concerned corruption, those concerned fair, equal opportunities for all in social and economic life. Those concern the fair elections, and the biggest challenge we have today is the judicial reform. Those are the various issues. It's only just a short list of the various other issues that the government has been addressing.
And you claim that work is being done very quickly, but we had your Justice Minister just the other day, Mr. Badassian, announcing that the new agency to discover and investigate corruption crimes, the so-called Anti-Corruption Committee, won't be operational till 2021.
Absolutely. You know,
we're in 2019.
That's why I was talking about the power of political will. We absolutely understand that with political will you can deliver results, but that is not sufficient. You have to institutionally consolidate the system which can react to those phenomena.
Does it take 2 years to set up a committee?
No. This is something rather more complicated and more complex. You are working on institutional capacity to address the phenomenon of corruption. And that is something more serious. And in fact, we're working on this, not just within the country, but also with our international partners, specifically the regional partners, the European Union, the Council of Europe. Others are very important partners.
The thing is, you're talking about the future, but there's some hubris in your government, because the Prime Minister, Mr. Pashinyan, told European MEPs not so long ago, and this is a direct quote, "We have managed to root out systemic corruption," he said, but that's patently not true.
Why not?
Well, for example, only a few weeks after he said it, there were serious accusations put at the door of the head of the Anti-Corruption Agency, the man that the Prime Minister himself had appointed. It did raise some very significant questions about whether the Prime Minister is really across what's happening in terms of official corruption.
No, I don't know what you're referring to, but as I'm saying, within the country, within months, we have been capable to deliver a strong message that there will be no more suitcases carried to the powers of, to the powerhouse. There will be no more.
So you mean suitcases full of money?
Yes, there will be.
Because that's been happening for a long time in your country.
No more unfair conditions in the economic social field. No more of this phenomena, and this has been addressed head-on.
But my point was, you're saying you don't know what I'm talking about, but Mr. Sanasarian, who is a close associate of the Prime Minister, was put in charge of the State Control Service, the current anti-corruption agency, and now he's facing charges himself. When the Armenian people see this unfold, how can they have confidence?
The system has been reacting, hasn't it? The system has been reacting.
But my point is that the Prime Minister assured Europe that he'd rooted out systemic corruption before the latest round of allegations.
The Prime Minister, let's not make it sort of, simplistic. As I am saying, institutional capacity has to be in place. Institutional capacity is our biggest challenge and the biggest priority today, to institutionally consolidate what we want to achieve in the country, what we have been delivering on the mandate of the people, which has brought this government in power. That's our biggest challenge.
Will the rule of law come out on top?
This is what we are absolutely aiming at. This is our mandate. There is no other priority for the government but exactly to deliver on those specific priorities: rule of law, independence, impartiality of the judiciary, creating a condition within which we can achieve that necessary level of reasonable trust in the judiciary.
And you say
that is a huge priority.
You say it's about institution building. You say it will take some time. I understand that. Anybody would understand that. In the meantime, we look at other signals to suggest there's real change as a result of the Velvet Revolution. One arena in which we must look for change is the state of the stalemated conflict between your country and neighbouring Azerbaijan over the disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh. I've seen no evidence that your government has brought new ideas, new imagination to this conflict.
Thank you. Look, when we achieved our, objectives domestically with the revolution, there was a question about what are foreign policy priorities. Our foreign policy priorities have been quite constant. This is about sustaining the national security architecture within Armenia. Nagorno-Karabakh is a huge security challenge to Armenia, to our people. For us, this is a question, first of all, a question of security of our compatriots, security of the human, of 150,000 compatriots. And we have engaged, our government has engaged without hesitation immediately in the process. And we have engaged in a constructive way. We're absolutely cognizant of the benefits of peace. We want peace, we want to achieve that, but we want to do it in a way which sustains the reasonable parity of commitments of the parties, so that we do address, in the reasonable way, we do address our ultimate priorities of security and status for the people of Nagorno-Karabakh.
You tell me, Minister, you want peace. Well, explain to me then why in August, just a few months ago, the Prime Minister made a very high-profile speech in which he declared in no uncertain terms, Karabakh is Armenia, period.
Right.
And he wants peace?
He does want peace because the Prime Minister of Armenia has been saying that the solution that we have to achieve has to be acceptable to the people of Armenia, to the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, and the people of Azerbaijan.
Well, given that international law...
We are waiting from Azerbaijan a signal, a message, which refers to the interest, to our interest, which refers to our concerns, which refers to the concerns of security of the people of Nagorno-Karabakh. They have been refusing to do that.
I have to be honest with you. When a Prime Minister declares Karabakh is Armenia, period, when he knows that flies in the face of international law, the position of the UN and all of the independent international agencies, I'm struggling to see how that is a move, a gesture toward peace, particularly when he also followed up by leading the crowd during that particular speech with chants of unification, nationalist slogans that had been heard in the 80s and 90s during the war with Azerbaijan. And you're telling me this is a Prime Minister that is devoted to making peace?
I am telling you that because the Armenian agenda, the pan-Armenian agenda, concerns Nagorno-Karabakh. Now, Armenia is pursuing a development agenda of consolidation, and it doesn't leave out the people of Nagorno-Karabakh. That's a pan-Armenian agenda. We're a nation which is within a territory of the Republic of Armenia, but a nation of a global nature everywhere.
But you have to recognize international law, don't you?
Within that, Nagorno-Karabakh is a land with our compatriots. We haven't been
there's no question that Armenian people live on that territory, but that territory is not Armenian.
No. What I'm saying is that Nagorno-Karabakh is a territory in which our compatriots live, a territory in which we care about their security. We are the sole guarantors of their security, but we are committed to the peace process, the peace process in which the security and the status of Nagorno-Karabakh are ultimate priorities. And we are committed to the peace process. We haven't been, detracting from the peace process in any way.
Your closest military allies, hang on, Minister, let me just ask a question. Your closest military allies in many ways are the Russians. They have military base on your territory. You've worked with them for a long, long time. Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, after this rather extraordinary statement by your prime minister just a couple of months ago, said, the sides are making statements, serious ones. Statements are heard that Karabakh is Armenia. He said, it's the same as if the PM, the Prime Minister of Albania, said from Tirana that Kosovo is Albania. So even the Russians are now saying that your position is unacceptable.
Now, I have to repeat again, the Prime Minister of Armenia has been consistently insisting that we need a message of compromise from Azerbaijan.
But yours wasn't a message of compromise.
Hang on, we haven't been hearing. When the Prime Minister of Armenia went out insisting that the solution should be acceptable to all the people of Armenia, people of Azerbaijan, and people of Nagorno-Karabakh, he has been receiving a lot of criticism on our government has been receiving a lot of criticism on that. But we insist on that. We insist that the compromise is the way out.
Well,
the compromise in which there is a parity of commitments.
I guess compromise.
In fact, in that same speech, he has been referring to the solution of the Nagorno-Karabakh within a separate paragraph in which he was quite consistent with our approach on a compromise-based solution on Nagorno-Karabakh.
Just a couple more things on this vexed issue of the conflict, which of course began in the 80s and hasn't been solved. It seems to me it needs imagination to get out of the stalemate. Are you prepared to be imaginative and in the spirit of reconciliation to acknowledge that over the last 20 years and more, the Armenian military has been responsible for very serious abuses? The United Nations has concluded that. The European Court of Human Rights has concluded that. Independent groups like Amnesty International have talked about the abuses of your armed forces. If you want to change the dynamic with this new government, are you prepared to say that, yes, we have been responsible for serious abuses in the past?
You are twisting a little bit the narrative. The state of Armenia happens to be the only guarantor of the security.
Please answer my question.
That's what I'm doing. We are the only guarantors. What we have is the security arrangement for the people of Nagorno-Karabakh. We have been responsible for that. We bear that responsibility. We bear that security guarantee, the role of a security guarantor. And we have been engaged in the negotiations in a way that we work out the parameters in which
you're not answering my question. I'll try one more time. The Human Rights Watch report into the conflict, a big report, 1995, it said Armenian forces, with the support of the Republic of Armenia, were responsible for the majority of abuses during that period of war. And as recently as 2017, the European Court of Human Rights delivered 12 judgments concerning Armenia. 11 found the country in violation of the European Convention of Human Rights. So all I'm asking is whether you're prepared to say in the past mistakes were made, abuses happened, and that you, as well as Azerbaijan, need to express regret for that and try to seek a solution.
That is part of moving forward. That is true. But at the moment, we also have to, figure out the way in which we can address our biggest priority. The security of the people.
Just to stop you, you do now express regret for some of the things your military did in the past.
Because, at the beginning of the 90s, there was a situation when 40% of the population of Nagorno-Karabakh has been wiped out. 40% of the territory of Nagorno-Karabakh has been taken control of. There has been abuses. There have been violations in a most outrageous way. We have a situation when the government, let me finish, when the government of Azerbaijan has gone so far as glorifying a murder of an Armenian. Not long ago, there was a situation when in April 2016, Azerbaijan attempted again an aggression against Nagorno-Karabakh. That only amplifies our sense of security. Now, when referring to your specific question, yes, I accept that we need to move forward all together, all of us. But it takes two to tango. It takes every party to engage in a constructive way. This is why the Prime Minister was saying a solution which is acceptable to all, and we're waiting for the message from Azerbaijan to reciprocate, so that that spirit does get a foundation in our move forward.
A final question on this, then I want to move on. But on the 17th of October, the Azeri government accused Armenian armed forces of having violated the ceasefire across the line of contact between the two forces 20 times. Is it possible? No. Is it possible that there could be a new surge of military conflict?
This is what we're absolutely focused on. I think, over this time, since our government stepped in, and that's another very good indication of the seriousness of purpose on our side, as the government of Armenia, as the new government of Armenia, that, we have managed to establish some sort of trust, some sort of confidence, in which over this year there has been considerable reduction of ceasefire violations, and we're absolutely focused on sustaining and consolidating that.
Right.
That is one of our priorities, and in fact that is what we have been focused on and continue to work with the Azeri government, with the authorities in Nagorno-Karabakh. So that's a very important part of the negotiating process.
Let's get to a much bigger picture now. It seems to me Armenia faces a strategic choice, in a sense, over the next few years. You've got your new government. You have to decide whether it is in the strategic interest of your country to put your priorities and your greatest effort into developing the relationship with Russia and the Eurasian Economic Union, of which you are a part, and in fact I think you hold the presidency right now.
Yes, that's right.
Or whether you actually refocus your efforts looking west to the European Union and to NATO in the long run. Which are you going to do?
Our world is not bipolar, it's not that, black and white. Our foreign policy is based on consolidation of the partnerships for the integrity of our national security architecture. We have extensive relations with Russia, allied relations with Russia. That is a very important dimension of our foreign policy. We work together in the Eurasia Economic Union, in the Collective Security Treaty Organization. Equally, the European Union is an extremely important partner and a security supplier to Armenia and to the region. And equally, the United States is a very important partner to Armenia.
I understand, Minister, but frankly, to use a metaphor, if you try to ride two horses, you run the risk of a very grave injury. Let me just quote you the words of your own Deputy Prime Minister, who said recently, since the coming of the new government, Armenia has a completely different level of relationship with the European Union. He said this new political team, that is you and your fellow ministers, and this new political situation is now completely in line with the EU's views. But, I mean, that really isn't true, is it?
There's no contradiction. The European Union has not been building relations with Armenia in a way that it would insist that you have to have relations only in this dimension without other dimensions. In fact, our biggest challenge and the very important priority in our foreign policy is not to build relations with one partner at the expense of the other. This is a very difficult act, but this is what is required for our national security.
Isn't the truth? This is going to be a test of your reformist agenda and principles and values. Because if you choose to stay wedded to Putin's Russia, the Eurasian Economic Union, frankly, you are going to probably continue many of the practices of the old regimes in Armenia: centralization, authoritarian rule, real problems with freedom of expression. Or you can adopt a different set of values, open yourself up, and embrace many of the values at the heart of the European Union. That's your choice.
I think you're making the same mistake. You're trying to see in Armenian revolution geopolitics. What happened in Armenia was strictly an Armenian matter. The revolution was a revolution of values. The revolution was about democracy, about human rights, about rule of law. This is what concerns Armenians. This is what we need for our country. This is what we're reacting with to the mandate of the public. But there is no geopolitics in our revolution.
So when Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State, there's a while ago, but nonetheless it may be still relevant, she described the Eurasian Economic Union as a, quote, move to re-Sovietize the region led by Vladimir Putin. And she added ominously, we know what the goal is.
That's a view that has been expressed and doesn't necessarily need to be shared. Because for us, the Eurasia Economic Union is a 200 million market. in which we have an access and which we, as members, we are also party and participants of the framing the regulatory, rules in the economic union, and we are participating in that. But it is not at the expense of what we're doing with the European Union.
Interesting.
And with the European Union, we have a very important relationship, value-based relationship. We have a very important agreement, the Comprehensive and Enhanced Partnership Agreement with the European Union, which has very significant political part, the justice and freedoms part, sectoral reforms part, the regulatory approximation part.
Yes, you have all these different little deals and agreements. I'm talking about big vision, big future. There are many people, countrymen and countrywomen of yours, whose long-term dream is to see Armenia in the European Union or in a very close association with it, and inside NATO or in a very close association with it. You're not one of those people, aren't you?
None in Armenia is going to do something that is going to be undermined. We're a heavily security conscious people. We're not going to do something which is going to undermine our security for 10 minutes.
So bottom line, you stay with Moscow, because in the end, Moscow is the greatest guarantor of your security.
Hang on, we're not staying with Moscow, we're not staying with Brussels, we're not staying with Washington or anyone else. We're staying only in Yerevan, only for the interest of Armenia. And that requires a very difficult act, but this is for the security, for the interest of Armenia. The national interest of Armenia is what we're driven with, and this is what we're rejecting entirely, rejecting a bipolar world, either this way or that way.
Well,
and what we're also rejecting, do not judge our democracy by our geopolitical, choices, because our geopolitical choices are very complex. They are very, they are in integrity, and we have the very good understanding from all our partners, whether this is Russia, whether this is the European Union, whether this is the United States, and this is working out.
If I may say so, you are walking a very delicate tightrope.
It is difficult to accept.
So here's, before we end, just one very specific challenge. You live in a tough neighborhood. You have, let us say, interesting neighbors. One of your neighbors is Iran.
Yes.
You have an increasingly close economic relationship with Iran.
Yes.
You're sharing a gas pipeline and all sorts of other projects. The Americans are now demanding that you implement their sanctions on Iran, which would affect your economic relationship with Iran. Your Prime Minister, others in your government have said that they won't do that they are determined to maintain close economic relations with Iran. So what's your position?
We have been really engaged in a very heavy conversation, both with our Iranian partners and our American partners. You're absolutely right. It's a very difficult act. It's a very difficult act when your partners are having problems of their own, and we have to look after.
It's also, as we've said, it's a question of priorities. Exactly.
It's a question of our national interest.
So what are you going to do? Are you going to please the Americans, or are you going to displease the Americans?
We have neighborhoods of strategic significance: Georgia and Iran. Iran is a gateway. Iran is a very important partner. It's a nation with whom we share centuries of relationship. It's a nation in which we have Armenian presence, Armenian heritage. It's a nation which is known to us very well, and we're of course. We're faithful to this relationship.
Faithful. So your message to Donald Trump,
at the time,
as it was to John Bolton when he visited last year, is forget about it.
At the same time, we have been very open with our Iranian partners, figuring out what is possible, what is not, because we also care about our relations with the United States, and we're very sensitive about what's coming out from Washington. And the dialogue with Mr. Bolton, with the dialogue with the administration in the State Department, has been exactly about how we combine our interest with what is happening in our region, and that has been possible. It's a very difficult act, but this is what we are required to do.
To finish the metaphor, the problem with tight ropes is that you do yourself a great deal of damage if you fall off. You might fall off.
Well, if we stretch ourselves by way of going one way or another, opening up for a major security, vulnerability by way of making one choice or another, you are not guaranteeing that if we do declare, tell me, if we do declare that we are going one way, is it going to work out within immediately, or we are going to be in the queue for 10 years, 15 years? We cannot afford security vacuum for 10 or 15 minutes, let alone 10 or 15 years.
And we have to end there, but Foreign Minister Mnatsakanyan, I thank you very much for being on HardTalk.
Thank you very much.